Hello and welcome to another video, specifically another Bridgerton Season 4 video. This one, we're deviating a little bit from Bridgerton itself, and we're going to do a little reading vlog. I'm going to be reading two different Regency romances, so two other romance books that are set in the same time period. The two books are Long Shadow by Olivia Atwater and The Scandalous Confessions of Lydia Bennet Witch. So without further ado, let's get into the vlog. As I mentioned in the intro, we're reading two books in this vlog. Both of them are set in the Regency period, just like Bridgerton, and coincidentally enough, both of them have a little bit of magic, and I couldn't be happier. I honestly couldn't. If you have been here before, been to my channel before, you know that my preferred genre is fantasy, so I'm quite excited to get into these two books. I'm particularly excited to get started with Long Shadow right now because I read the previous book in this series about a month ago. It's called 10,000 Stitches, and I had so much fun reading it. As I was starting to read that book reminded me that Bridgerton was coming out. It reminded me to get excited about Bridgerton Season 4 because that book, 10,000 Stitches, is about a maid who falls in love with a gentleman named Benedict. It is also somewhat inspired by Cinderella, just like Benedict Bridgerton's story is inspired by Cinderella. So I started reading and I'm like, am I reading the fantasy version of Bridgerton Season 4 right now? It ends up going in a different direction, and that's all I'm gonna say about that for now. But I'm excited to get into this book. This is the third book, I think the last book in this Regency fairy tale series, and it is about the daughter of the couple that's in the first book, which is called Half a Soul. And so I'm excited to get into this. I'm excited to get to know this new character, especially given that she's the daughter of a previous couple that was featured in this series. That's my update. That's my first update. I'm gonna start reading this now, and as I read it, I will share my thoughts with you. Hello, it is day 2 of this vlog. Today I was just in the zone. I filmed my Bridgerton recap video, so if you haven't seen the recap for An Offer from a Gentleman, go check out that video. I filmed that. Was editing it all afternoon, and now I need a break. As much as I love the editing, I love the video stuff, sometimes I need a break, and that is right now. So I'm going to sit down, I'm going to read Long Shadow a little bit more. I only got through chapter 1 last night. Last night was a busier night than I was expecting, so I only got through chapter 1. Then at some point, I'm gonna have to get up and make some dinner, do some laundry, boring stuff. But while I do that boring stuff, I'm going to get started on the audiobook for Confessions of Lydia Bennet Witch. I'm excited about this one. I think it'll be fun. I think it will be cute and silly and Pride and Prejudice-y and Jane Austen-y, and I am excited to get started on that later tonight. And so I thought I'd just film a little update for you on that because I know tonight will get busy and I won't want to film an update then. So that's my update. Later tonight, I'm going to start reading that as I'm making dinner and doing chores. Hello, good morning. I have some updates for you. Last night, I managed to make a really fun new soup recipe while also listening to the first 2 hours of Confessions of Lydia Bennet Witch. I wanted to mention this soup because it's a new recipe and I was really excited to try it, and it turned out really well. But to get to the books, because that's probably why you're here, I obviously have some thoughts about the Confessions of Lydia Bennet Witch that I'm going to share with you, and I also read several more chapters of Long Shadow, so we'll talk about that too. To start with Miss Lydia Bennet, this book so far is exactly what I wanted it to be. It obviously has the characters from Pride and Prejudice in it, but the Pride and Prejudice part of the story is not in your face, or at least so far it's not really a significant part of this story, because this story is Lydia's point of view, and it's also focusing on the fact that she's a witch, which is fun. I like it a lot. So it's Pride and Prejudice light, funny, witchy, lots of witchy shenanigans, and I have to say my favorite part, this is mentioned in the synopsis, so it's not a spoiler. Don't get mad at me. It's in the synopsis. Kitty is Lydia's familiar and isn't actually her sister. And I'm like, wait, what? How does that work? But then after reading it, she just fell in love with the family cat and started treating the family cat as if the cat were her older sister. And because she is a witch, her powers like cast this glamour over the cat and tricked the entire family, the entire town of Bridgeton or whatever, everybody into thinking, oh, this cat is a person. It's just one of the Bennett girls, which I think is so funny. And once that was explained, I was like, oh, I get it. And I love it. So that's a lot of fun. But there are other little shenanigans and things that we see that come about because of Lydia's witchcraft powers, and I'm liking that. We're two hours into the book. So I'm like 15% in the book. There's still a lot left to happen, and I will update you on my feelings as things continue. But so far, I'm really liking it. And if you like Pride and Prejudice and you like fun, silly twists on Pride and Prejudice, this one's a fun one, and I would definitely recommend reading it around Halloween time because it really leans into the like witchiness of it. So those are all of my thoughts on the Confessions of Lydia Bennet Witch. Now to update you on Long Shadow, this one, there's a bit of a murder mystery, and it has to do with like there's some dark magic involved in these murders. There are 3 girls who have been murdered so far, and our main character, Abigail, was kidnapped by a fairy when she was a little girl, and because of that, she sees this thing happening to these other young women who are about her same age, and she can't let it happen. And so she starts hunting down clues to try and figure out what's going on and see if she can stop it. And along the way, she meets a young woman named Mercy, who's also trying to figure out who murdered these other young women. I love their dynamic, Abigail and Mercy, because they meet at the crime scene and they're like, wait, you did it. No, you did it. And I like that they kind of don't trust each other, but at the same time, they're like so fascinated by the other person, and they can't help but want to be around the other person, even though they don't quite trust them. And I think they might have something to do with the murder. They continue to investigate and keep meeting. And so far, and now where I'm at in the book, they just got themselves into a little bit of trouble. And I'm not gonna like expand on that too much because I don't want to spoil too much. But yeah, they've just got themselves in a sticky situation. I'm excited to see how they get out of it. Another thing I love in this book is that Abigail, she's also going around with the ghost of her dead brother. And he's helping too, but she's the only one who can see him until they meet Mercy. For some reason, Mercy can see and speak to ghosts. And so Mercy and Hugh is the brother's name, are developing this bond, this friendship, that is quite cute as well. And so I'm just really liking it so far. I think it's really sweet. There's an aspect of like these 2 girls who are investigating these murders and stuff. Both of them can use magic, but different kinds of magic, and so they're both kind of jealous of the other's magic. It's just like this like jealousy, this rivalry, this like I don't trust you, but at the same time I just want to be around you all the time, and it's fun. It's really fun. I'm liking it a lot. That's all I have to say at this point. Today, I decided I'm going to read for a little bit before I get to work for the day, because yesterday I didn't even think about picking up a book until late in the evening, and I don't want that to happen again today. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to read for about an hour before I get started on my work for the day, which comprises of posting my Bridgerton video. So here's another shameless plug to go watch my Bridgerton recap after you finish this video. But until then, I'm going to read. It's been a couple days since we last spoke. Yesterday was not my day. I was not feeling good, so I just laid in bed and I rewatched the first 2 seasons of Bridgerton, which was great and fitting for this. I didn't film that because it was me laying in bed rewatching the first 2 seasons of Bridgerton. I did also manage to listen to quite a bit of my audiobook, and I wanted to share some more thoughts with you on the scandalous confessions of Lydia Bennet Witch. So let me tell you where I'm at with that. I am now 61% through this audiobook, and I'm still really liking it. Something I don't think I mentioned before is that, like, the way the story is told, you're kind of following 2 different timelines. You've got the present timeline, which takes place after the events of Pride and Prejudice, but then you also have Lydia reflecting and telling you her side of the story of the events of Pride and Prejudice, which is really fun. And I'm liking both stories so far, like equally, which is a lot of fun. In Pride and Prejudice, Lydia as a character is seen as this like very silly, unaware, not very smart, not very bright, very vain, very ridiculous, and a little bit wicked character because she runs off with a man when she's 16 years old and doesn't consider the consequences of that, doesn't consider how that affects anybody but herself. That's the story of Pride and Prejudice, or that's not the story, but that is something that happens in Pride and Prejudice. This is a fun book because since it is from her perspective, we get her side of the story, but not just her side of the story. In this book, she is a witch, and so that comes into play with a lot of this too. She's like, I'm not as silly or dim-witted or wicked as you think I am. I'm a little bit of all of those things, but not as much as you think. And here's why, and here's the real situation. Here's what actually happened. And you know, this thing that you think happened because Lizzie told it this way, well, this is my side of the story. Here's what actually happened. And you know, I'm having a lot of fun with that. I am. I just think it's fun. And yeah, reading this book is fun too. Like, it's very youthful. It's very, like, you still get part of, like, there is, yes, this is a twist on Pride and Prejudice. Yes, this is a different character than the way this character is written is different than she's written in Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. But there are also still similarities. She does just have this youthful energy to her. She is a little bit selfish. Like, she is a little bit selfish. Of her sisters, she really only loves Kitty, who is really a cat, and her familiar, and she doesn't really care too much about her other sisters. And so you see this like youngest sister energy of whenever she's talking about her sisters. And you can see that like there are pieces of the like Jane Austen's Lydia Bennet, right, in this character. It's just, now that we're getting the story from her point of view, we're getting more of that. I'm having fun with it. I am. It looks so dark in here. I don't know what to do about it. One day I will paint this wall. And then when I sit in front of this window to film, it will not look like I'm in a cave. Sorry, I got distracted. I haven't read any more of Long Shadow. I just didn't have the energy for it yesterday, but I will be reading some more today and this weekend. It is now the weekend, so I've got lots of errands to run and things like that, but in between errands and things, I'm going to try and get some more reading in, some more audiobook listening in. Hello, it's been a couple of days. Started a new job. There's a lot going on, so I apologize. Not that you would know that it's been a few days, but now you know. I finished The Scandalous Confessions of Lydia Bennet Witch yesterday. Overall, I really liked it. I thought it was fun. It was exactly what I wanted, what I expected, except for the fact that it's not really much of a romance. I thought it would be lean a little bit more romance than it actually was, which is fine. I still really liked it. I still really enjoyed it. The ending, I'm not going to tell you how it ends, just that I liked the ending because the ending kind of connects it. It reminds you of its connection to Pride and Prejudice. Not that you ever forget that it's connected to Pride and Prejudice, but it just like ties it in with Pride and Prejudice in a way that I thought was very nice, but also still very true to what this book is. It's Lydia's story, so it's still very true to Lydia as a character and how she's grown over the course of this story, and so I really liked it. I just thought it was a great ending. I thought it was a fun book. I really enjoyed it, and although it wasn't a romance, there was still a lot in this book about friendship, friendship and sisterhood, and I enjoyed that. I did. And there's a little bit of romance. Just a little hint of romance. I liked it. And those are my thoughts on The Scandalous Confessions of Lydia Bennet Witch. We've gotten further, as far as Long Shadow goes, we have gotten further into the mystery plot, and it's getting juicy. It's getting very juicy. So I'm looking forward to reading more, and when I finish it, I will let you know my final thoughts on everything once I finish it. right, it's time for me to share my final thoughts on Long Shadow with you. Believe it or not, I have thoughts. First of all, I want to talk about the magic in this. I want to talk about the world of fairy that is represented in not only this book, but the other 2 books in this series. And yeah, so let's start there. I love it. We're dealing with fairies who aren't just like nice, happy fairies. We're dealing with fairies they are in folklore that can be kind of tricky, that can try to trick you into doing things like giving up things that you don't want to give up, making you do things that you don't necessarily want to do. We're dealing with those kind of fairies, or at least we're told of those kind of fairies in this world. And so there's this kind of apprehension that our characters have when it comes to interacting with fairies and interacting with the world. You know, there's this nervousness, there's this caution that they approach this world with. And yet the fairies that we meet in this book and in the other books, the fairies that play the biggest role in these stories are just lovely characters, with the exception of one. The fairy that plays the biggest role in Half a Soul is a bad character. But the other fairies that we get to know in this series are just, they feel human. They have very human emotions, but you get to know them and you feel for them and you relate to them. And I like that. And I like that it's kind of, you know, you have these things in life where you're apprehensive about it, you're cautious about it, you're trying to protect yourself against it. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes those things don't end up being that scary. Sometimes you end up falling in love with those people or things or experiences that you were cautious about at one point. So I like that. I also just love the whimsy with which fairy is written about in this book and in 10,000 Stitches in particular. Those 2 books definitely take a warmer approach to how fairy is described. It is still a place where like you don't know what to expect, and so the characters still approach with caution, but then the world of fairy itself is a bit of a character of its own. And the way it presents itself in this book and in 10,000 Stitches is just whimsical and cute and magical. And there's a scene in this book early on that I didn't mention explicitly, but there's a scene in which it's just a very whimsical romantic scene with our 2 main characters, Abigail and Mercy, and all these other fairies, and it's at night, and there's music, and the way it's described is just absolutely magical, and I love that. One thing I will say about this book in comparison to the other 2 books in this little series is that Abigail and Mercy feel younger than the other couples in this series. I think it does say at some point that Abigail is in her late teens in this book, so that makes this a YA book. And I don't remember really noticing how old the other couples were. I just assumed they were in their early 20s, and so it was kind of like a new adult novel rather than a young adult novel. This one, I definitely noticed it more. Not that it's a bad thing, it's just I noticed it. And Abigail is a teenager. So that is just something I noticed. But to wrap up on a couple of things I loved about this book, I really loved in the ending, I'm not going to spoil it for you, so don't worry, but I really loved the ending that Mercy is able to, how do I describe this? I love that both Mercy and Abigail get to decide who they want to be. They have voices kind of swaying them. They have these stories that they've told themselves about their history, about things that they've gone through, and because of these things they've gone through, they think they need to be one thing or the other. And in the end, Abigail and Mercy both they decide for themselves who they want to be moving forward, regardless of what has happened in their past, regardless of, the voices around them. I just really liked seeing them make that decision, each of them make that decision for themselves. And I feel like that kind of is another reason that the age of these characters stood out to me, is that in this book more is because that is a theme in the ending, and so it felt very coming of age to me. So there's that, but I loved it. Another thing I love about this book is that there are high stakes. There is danger. There is, like I said, like there is in this book as well as Half a Soul, we do definitely have higher stakes than what we see in 10,000 Stitches. That one, I feel like the stakes are a lot lower. This one, there are high stakes. Like I said, what brings these 2 girls together is a murder. They are trying to figure out who murdered this young woman, and so they're trying to figure that out, and they know that like dark magic is at play here. And so there definitely are stakes in this book. The stakes help to kind of nudge along the romance a little bit. And because the stakes are so intense, because the stakes are life and death, the romance is uncomplicated. It's pretty straightforward. And yes, there are moments where our characters are questioning whether it's right to be together, and they're questioning their feelings for one another, but it's from a natural place, a natural teenage place of like, I don't know if they really like me, you know, and things like that. And it's not some big dramatic, somebody was lying to somebody about something else and now they're having this big fight and they're yelling at each other, and like, it's not that. It's just the complications in the romance are like small but like believable, you know. And I like that the romance doesn't have these big melodramatic complications when there are such high stakes outside of the romance. It kind of puts it into perspective. And so yeah, the romance is kind of approached in a very straightforward, uncomplicated way, and I like that. I like that there are cameos in this book of characters from the previous two books, but they don't detract from Abby's story. This is still very much Abby's story and hers alone. And while, you know, she might get advice from some of these characters, she might have tea with Effie from 10,000 Stitches, and her mother was the main character in the first book in this series. Like, those characters don't draw the attention away from Abby, and I like that. And lastly, I think my favorite thing about this book and the other two books in this series is it's a small thing, it's a simple thing, but the epilogues in these books are just so sweet and whimsical and charming. And, you know, we reached the end of the book, the last chapter, right? And then the epilogue gives us a little montage of what happens after our characters choose to be together, they're happy, whatever. We get to see just a quick little glimpse of like what happens over the course of the rest of their lives. And I love that. We see that in this book. We see that in the other two books, and I just love it. I love it, okay? It reminds me of one of my childhood favorite books, Ella Enchanted, and what can I say? I just really like it. So that is everything I have to say about this book. This definitely had more romance in it than The Scandalous Confessions of Lydia Bennet. So of these two books, if you're looking for something with more romance, I would definitely recommend this. And if you haven't read the other two books in the series, you can definitely pick up this book regardless, but I would highly recommend the other two books in the series as well. If you like regency romance and you want something with a little bit of magic, this is great and delightful. And if you want something that is a little bit more funny, a little bit more witty, a little bit more comedic and lighthearted, not that this isn't lighthearted, this is still wholesome and light and romancy, but if you want something just a little bit more lighthearted and all of those other things I just said, then I would recommend The Scandalous Confessions of Lydia Bennet Witch. So those are my thoughts on both of the books that I have read in this vlog, and now I'm looking forward to the second part of Bridgerton season 4 to come out. So that's where I'm at currently in life. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble about books. If you want to see more Bridgerton related videos, you should check out the videos here on the screen. And with all that said, I'll see you in my next video. Bye!